Pay close attention to these two men in this CCTV footage. The one sitting near the window is Mark Rayner, a 42-year-old computer technician. The man standing behind him, tense and breathing hard, is Eli Morgan, a construction foreman from Denver. At first glance, it looks like a normal night in a roadside diner, but in less than 3 minutes, one of these men will be dead. And the story behind why began 7 years earlier. On November 3rd, 2017, police in Aurora, Colorado, responded to a 911 call from a quiet neighborhood tucked away behind tree-lined streets and cul-de-sacs. Inside a modest family home, officers found Sarah Morgan, a 34-year-old mother of 2, lying motionless beside a shattered coffee table. Blood had soaked into the beige carpet beneath her head. Her phone lay a few feet away, screen cracked, frozen mid-call. The autopsy would later confirm blunt force trauma to the skull as the cause of death. There were no signs of forced entry, no valuables missing, no footprints, fingerprints, or weapon recovered, and worst of all, no suspects. The husband, Eli Morgan, had been at work that night. He clocked in at 7:02 p.m. at a construction site 20 miles away and clocked out at 3:13 a.m. His alibi checked out. He'd rushed home only after receiving a call from a neighbor who saw flashing lights outside the house. Officers said he collapsed when they told him the news. For months, detectives chased dead ends. A possible robbery gone wrong. A jealous ex-student from Sarah's yoga class. Even the theory of a transient breaking in during the night. But nothing made sense. No forced door, no missing jewelry, and no DNA except for Sarah's. By summer 2018, the case was cold. The box containing all the evidence was sealed, labeled, and shelved. But Eli never accepted that. Friends remembered him as kind, dependable, the kind of man who fixed a neighbor's car in the middle of winter without asking for a dime. He'd been married to Sarah for 11 years. They met in college, bought a small house, and had 2 children, one in middle school, one in 3rd grade. They weren't rich, but they were happy. At least that's what everyone thought. After Sarah's death, Eli changed. He stopped eating regular meals. He lost nearly 20 pounds. He sold his contracting business, closed the bank account he once shared with Sarah, and spent his nights alone, scrolling through police reports and crime forms. He would sit in the dark, replaying her final voicemail again and again, her soft voice saying,
"Love you. Be home soon."
It was the last time he ever heard her alive. 5 years passed. The police moved on to new cases. The neighbors stopped bringing casseroles. The world forgot. But Eli didn't. Every evening, he poured himself coffee instead of sleep and combed through every file he could access. He wrote letters to retired detectives, cold case podcasters, even online psychics. He wasn't looking for comfort anymore, just a name. One name that could make sense of the senseless. Then, in May of 2022, everything changed. An email arrived in his inbox from an address he didn't recognize. No subject line, no message, just an attachment. A single image, grainy, low resolution, from what looked like a gas station security camera. And below it, 7 chilling words. "Thought you'd want to see this. He's alive." The picture showed a man standing beside a gas pump under flickering lights. The face was partly obscured by the hood of a sweatshirt, but one detail stood out: a black spiral tattoo encircled by barbed wire, wrapping around his left wrist. It was distinctive, unique, and horribly familiar. Eli stared at it for minutes that felt like hours, because in Sarah's autopsy report, there had been a bruise on her wrist described as patterned constriction consistent with contact under pressure. He had never understood what that meant until now. The bruise and the tattoo matched perfectly. Little did Eli know that image would become the start of a descent that would consume every piece of who he once was. He printed the image, taped it to his wall, and began to dig. He tracked the gas station's brand, the timestamp, the coordinates on the receipt header visible at the bottom of the image. He called clerks pretending to be a private investigator. He spent nights combing through open social media posts, cross-referencing the spiral tattoo on tattoo forums and public photos. Weeks turned into months. Slowly, the man gained shape. His name was Mark Rayner, 42, a freelance systems engineer who traveled often between Colorado and New Mexico for short-term tech contracts. No criminal record, no history of violence. He rented a small apartment in Santa Fe, paid his taxes on time, and kept mostly to himself. Nothing about him screamed killer, but when Eli looked at his photo, something in his gut twisted. He searched Mark's name online, finding little except a few old usernames linked to forums for IT freelancers. One of them led to an archived corporate database from a Denver software company, a place Sarah had done remote work for a few months before she died. When Eli gained access to that database, he found something that shattered what little peace he had left. Inside a deleted folder were dozens of chat logs between Mark and Sarah. They started professional, then flirtatious, then intimate. The last message was dated October 31st, 2017, 3 days before Sarah's murder. It read, "Please stop calling. My husband knows something's wrong." Eli's hands shook as he read it. The world around him went silent. The killer hadn't broken in. He'd been let in, invited. Eli printed every message and spread them across his kitchen table like crime scene evidence. He read each one aloud, his voice breaking, as if saying the words could somehow undo them. But they couldn't. They only deepened the wound. That night, Eli sat in the dark, staring at Sarah's photograph. He whispered, "Why?" But the picture, like everything else in his life now, offered no answer. Little did he know, he was about to trade grief for obsession, and obsession for something even darker. He drove to Santa Fe the next morning. No plan, no gun, just rage. The old truck rattled over miles of desert highway until the city's lights appeared in the distance. He parked outside Mark's apartment complex and waited. For 3 days, he watched from the same spot. He memorized Mark's schedule when he left for work, when he came home, what nights he stayed in. He saw him laugh with a neighbor, walk a dog, carry groceries. He looked like any other man, but Eli didn't see a man. He saw a ghost wearing skin. Each night, Eli sat in his truck listening to Sarah's last voicemail, the one where she promised to come home. Her voice cracked halfway through, as if she'd been holding back tears. It was the kind of detail he hadn't noticed before. Now it played like a confession. By the third night, Eli couldn't take it anymore. He checked into a cheap motel on the edge of town, using a fake name and cash. He wrote pages of notes, times, places, patterns, all leading to one conclusion. Mark Rayner had to die. But even as he planned, part of him hesitated. He wasn't a killer. He was a husband broken, betrayed, but still human. He wanted truth more than blood. At least, that's what he told himself. The following evening, he made one final decision. Instead of confronting Mark in the street, he would confront him with evidence. He compiled everything, the emails, the messages, the screenshots, the timeline onto a flash drive, and he wrote one last note to himself. "I don't want justice anymore. I want the truth." He slipped the drive into his jacket pocket, unaware that the moment he used it, his life and Mark's would never be the same. Little did Eli know, the footage that would later emerge from that diner's CCTV camera would haunt investigators for years. It would show a man who had already lost everything walking toward the only person who could give him closure or take it away forever. And in that moment, every unanswered question, every sleepless night, every whisper of guilt would come to an end. Or at least, that's what he believed. Because what Eli didn't realize was that someone else was already watching. Someone who wanted this confrontation to happen. Someone who had more to lose than either of them. And when the next act began, the truth would come at a cost no one could pay. January 9th, 2023, 8:17 p.m., a small diner on Route 84, just outside Santa Fe, New Mexico. Rain fell in thin, hesitant streaks against the window. Inside, the dull hum of an old refrigerator filled the silence, and the security camera above the counter recorded everything that followed. Mark Rayner sat at the window seat, eating pie, scrolling through his phone. He looked calm, ordinary, a man finishing a quiet dinner after a long day. Then the bell above the door chimed. Eli Morgan walked in. He didn't speak to anyone. He didn't order. He simply walked straight to the table, his reflection gliding across the polished floor. He sat opposite Mark, placed a small flash drive on the table and slid it across the wood. For a few seconds, they just stared at each other. Mark's hand froze around his coffee cup. Eli's eyes were cold, but not angry. He spoke softly, almost politely. "You know who I am." Mark didn't answer, but the twitch in his jaw said enough. After a moment, he reached for the flash drive, looked at it, then looked back at Eli. Whatever words followed were quiet, too quiet for the cameras to pick up. Witnesses later said they seemed like two old friends talking about something personal. But the tension in their shoulders told a different story. At 8:43 p.m., Mark stood up to leave. Eli followed. The argument that erupted lasted less than a minute. There was a flash movement, and then the sound of a gunshot. When police arrived minutes later, they found Mark Rayner lying on the ground with a single bullet wound to the chest. Eli was standing several feet away, hands raised, shaking, his face pale. "I didn't shoot him," he kept repeating. He was already dying. The first officers on scene expected resistance. Instead, Eli surrendered without a word. His truck keys and phone were still on the diner table, and the flash drive, the one that started it all, was still there, unopened. Detectives took him into custody that night. His story didn't change. He said he came to confront Mark, not kill him, that he wanted an explanation, not revenge. And when the shot went off, Mark was already falling. The ballistics report stunned investigators. The bullet that killed Mark didn't match Eli's registered firearm. The caliber was smaller, a .38 revolver round fired from a weapon that wasn't his. There were no powder burns on Mark's shirt, meaning the shooter had stood at least 6 feet away. Someone else had been there. Inside Mark's phone, officers found one final text message, sent 30 minutes before the shooting. "Meet me at the diner. It's about Sarah." The sender was an unregistered prepaid number, traced to a purchase at a convenience store in downtown Denver 3 days earlier, the same city where Sarah's older brother, Caleb Harper, lived. Caleb had been questioned once back in 2018. He'd told detectives that Sarah had confided in him about marital problems, that she'd been struggling, nothing suspicious. He'd even helped Eli after the funeral handled paperwork, insurance claims, legal documents. But when the life insurance policy finally paid out, something strange happened. More than $400,000 disappeared overnight from Sarah's estate account. When Eli asked about it, Caleb said it had gone to lawyer fees and probate costs. Eli believed him at the time. Now, with Caleb's name back in the picture, detectives dug deeper. A search warrant was issued, and inside Caleb's home, behind a false vent in his office wall, police found a small black case. Inside was a .38 revolver. The serial number had been filed off. Ballistics matched it perfectly to the bullet that killed Mark Rayner. When detectives brought him in, Caleb didn't deny owning the gun. He sat calmly, hands clasped, and asked for coffee. After an hour of silence, he finally spoke.
"Mark was blackmailing me. He said he'd tell Eli everything. He said he had proof I was involved in Sarah's death."
According to Caleb, Sarah's murder wasn't premeditated. It was a confrontation gone wrong. He'd gone to her house that night to talk about money. She had discovered he'd borrowed against her life insurance policy without telling her. They argued. She threatened to go to the police. He shoved her. She fell, hit the edge of the coffee table, and never got back up. In shock, he called Mark, a friend he'd met through Sarah's work, and begged for help. Mark arrived, panicked, and helped stage the scene to look like a break-in. They wiped surfaces, broke the back window, and left. No one was supposed to get caught, but Mark kept the secret and used it. For years, he demanded money. When Caleb ran out of funds, Mark threatened to go to Eli. So Caleb lured him to the diner that night with one message: "It's about Sarah." But what Caleb didn't know was that Eli had already found Mark first. And when Eli walked in, the man Caleb came to silence was already facing the husband of the woman they'd both betrayed. The perfect storm. 3 lives intersecting in one moment of reckoning. Caleb confessed to shooting Mark, claiming self-defense after a heated argument. But the forensics told a different story. The bullet's trajectory, the angle, the distance, all of it pointed to a deliberate act. A single, precise shot. Not a struggle, not panic. Execution. He was charged with voluntary manslaughter and fraud. But the case against him was messy. There were no direct witnesses to Sarah's death. And without a murder weapon from 2017, prosecutors couldn't prove beyond doubt that Caleb had killed her. The case file on Sarah Morgan's murder remained open, unsolved. Eli, meanwhile, was released without charges. Detectives called his investigation obsessive but not criminal. Still, the footage from that diner haunted them. The way he followed Mark out, the calm way he raised his hands, the faint smirk, some swore it was relief, not fear. Little did they know, Eli was still keeping one secret of his own. 3 months later, he walked into the police station with a manila envelope. Inside was everything he'd collected over the years: printouts, screenshots, phone logs, and a single audio recording. labeled "For the Record." In it, Eli's voice was steady. He said, "I started this to find the man who killed my wife, but I found something else, the truth. She wasn't who I thought she was, and maybe I wasn't either." He paused, then added softly, "I thought finding her killer would set me free. But sometimes justice doesn't heal you. It replaces what you lost with something colder." He handed over the file, nodded once, and left. He was never seen in public again. Caleb Harper was sentenced to 32 years for voluntary manslaughter and financial fraud. He still denies murdering Sarah Morgan, calling her death an accident of bad timing. Mark Rayner's body was cremated. No family claimed him, and Sarah's official cause of death remains listed as undetermined. The case file now spans nearly 2,000 pages, each filled with contradictions, love, betrayal, revenge, and loss. A web so tangled that truth itself seems to have vanished. Eli Morgan never gave another interview, but those who've watched the diner footage frame by frame say there's one thing most people miss. Just before he follows Mark outside, Eli glances once at the security camera directly at it. It's not the look of surprise, it's acknowledgement. Almost as if he knew the camera would see everything, as if he wanted it to. What the police didn't release to the public, however, was what happened later that night. A highway patrol dashcam recorded Eli's truck pulled over on a dirt road 10 miles north of town. He wasn't inside. The engine was off. On the passenger seat lay a single photograph of Sarah smiling, and beside it, his wedding ring. He hasn't been seen since. Whether he walked away to start over or met the same fate as the people he hunted, no one knows. But one thing is certain: the truth didn't save him. It consumed him. Because in cases like this, justice and revenge look the same in the dark. And when love dies, sometimes it doesn't leave ghosts behind. It turns the living into one.